never thought I'd be the kind of person to get caught up in something like this. I'm a practical woman, always have been. I keep my finances tight, I budget everything, and I don't take risks. That's how I managed to go from paycheck to paycheck in my early 20s to owning my own small business by the time I hit 35. Nothing fancy, just a boutique bookkeeping service that kept me comfortable. That's why, when my bank flagged an account under my name that I had no memory of opening, my first instinct was to assume it was some stupid clerical error. I was so sure it was nothing that I almost ignored it. Almost. It was only after the third flagged account, each one racking up mysterious transactions and overdraft fees, that I started to feel that slow, creeping sense of dread in my gut. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, pulling up statements from accounts I had supposedly opened in banks I had never even stepped foot in. The numbers were staggering. Thousands of dollars moved around in deposits and withdrawals, a messy trail of transactions that made no sense. But what made my stomach turn wasn't just the money. It was the name listed as a secondary account holder on every single one. My sister, Vanessa. Vanessa and I had never been particularly close, but we weren't enemies either. She was the wild one growing up, the one who always found herself in trouble but somehow managed to charm her way out of it. I was the responsible one, the one who cleaned up the messes until I stopped. I thought she had outgrown that phase. She had a decent job, a nice apartment, and as far as I knew, she wasn't struggling financially. But here she was, using my name, my credit, my identity, to pull off some kind of scam. And the worst part? She hadn't even tried to hide it. Did she think I wouldn't notice? Or did she just assume I wouldn't do anything about it? I sat there staring at the screen, my fingers hovering over my phone. I could have called her right then and there, demanded an explanation, threatened to go to the police. But something held me back. Vanessa had always been good at talking her way out of things. Crying, playing the victim, twisting the truth until you weren't even sure what you were mad about in the first place. If I confronted her now, she'd just find a way to make it my fault. No. If she was going to play dirty, I needed to be smarter. I wasn't just going to stop her. I was going to make her pay for every cent she took, and then some. The first thing I did was gather proof. I spent hours going through every transaction, screenshotting everything, saving statements, and even printing them out. I needed to understand exactly what she had done and how deep this mess really was. Turns out, Vanessa had been running this little scheme for over a year. She had opened at least 4 different accounts under my name, taken out credit lines, and even applied for a personal loan. The kicker? Some of that money had been deposited into her legitimate bank account, the one under her real name. That was the thread I needed to pull. Instead of confronting her outright, I decided to play along. I called one of the banks, pretending to be confused about an account I must have forgotten opening. I asked innocent questions, got details, and even requested changes to the account settings. Turns out, Vanessa had set up a few of them to transfer money between each other, probably to make the transactions seem more legitimate. I let the banker walk me through the process, taking mental notes. Then, I did something I knew Vanessa would never see coming. I redirected the funds. I started small. Just a few transfers here and there, nothing too obvious, at least not at first. I rerouted a couple of her automated deposits straight into one of my personal accounts, just to see if she'd notice. But Vanessa was sloppy. She had set up so many moving parts that she barely paid attention to any of them. When the money disappeared, she probably thought it was just another banking delay or an error she could smooth over. That was my green light. The next step was to flip the game entirely. I used the very same accounts she had opened in my name to take out even larger sums of money. Except now, I was sending it straight to creditors under her real name. Credit cards, overdue bills, even a few outstanding loans she had probably hoped to ignore forever. Every dollar she had stolen from me, I funneled into debts that would haunt her for years. The best part? Every transaction was legally tied to the accounts she had fraudulently opened. If she tried to complain, all she'd be doing was admitting to identity theft. It didn't take long for Vanessa to notice something was wrong. A week after I started my little operation, she called me, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Hey, weird question," she said, stretching out the words like she was trying to sound casual. Have you had any weird bank issues lately? Like, I don't know, missing deposits or weird charges? I almost laughed. The nerve of her, acting like we were just two sisters chatting about an innocent mix-up. I played dumb. Oh yeah, actually. My bank flagged some strange activity, but don't worry, I already took care of it. I let those words hang in the air, just long enough for her to squirm. There was a pause. Then, in a much tighter voice, she asked, "What do you mean by, took care of it?" I smiled, even though she couldn't see me. Oh, just cleaned up a few things. Made sure the right people got their money. It's all sorted now. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that I wondered if she was about to explode or hang up. But Vanessa was a survivor. She didn't lash out, not yet. Instead, she muttered something about needing to check on something and hung up. That's when I knew she was panicking. For the next few days, I could practically feel Vanessa scrambling behind the scenes. I imagined her sitting at her laptop, clicking through her accounts, watching money disappear and debts pile up in her name. She must have called the banks, desperate for answers, only to be met with policies and legal jargon that left her with no real options. She couldn't exactly report the fraud without implicating herself. That was the beauty of it. I had boxed her in completely. Then she showed up at my door. I expected anger, maybe even tears. But when I opened the door, Vanessa was eerily calm. That kind of controlled, forced politeness she always used when she was trying to manipulate someone. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her eyes scanning my apartment like she was looking for something. Evidence, maybe. Proof that I was the one pulling the strings now. "What the hell did you do?" she asked, voice low and steady. I shrugged, walking back to the kitchen like I didn't have a care in the world. "What do you mean? I just fixed a few things." I poured myself a cup of coffee, deliberately slow, letting the tension stretch between us. "You made a mess, Vanessa. I cleaned it up." Her jaw tightened. "You stole my money." Now I laughed. "Your money?" I turned to face her, crossing my arms. "You mean the money you funneled through accounts in my name? The money you stole from me? That money?" She clenched her fists. "You don't understand. I had a plan." "No," I cut her off. "You had a scam. And now it's over." Vanessa's face twisted, that mask of forced calm slipping just a little. She wasn't used to losing. For years, she had gotten away with everything: bad credit, unpaid loans, borrowing money with no intention of paying it back. She played people like chess pieces, always 3 moves ahead, but this time she'd underestimated me. "I can fix this," she said, her voice sharper now. "Just undo whatever the hell you did, and we can pretend none of this happened." I sipped my coffee, pretending to think it over. Let's see. You opened accounts in my name, took out loans, left me with debts that, if I hadn't caught in time, would have ruined my credit and my business. And now you want me to just undo it? I set my mug down with a soft clink. "Yeah, no, I don't think so." Her nostrils flared. "If you don't fix this, I swear..." "You'll what?" I tilted my head, watching her scramble for a threat she could actually use. She had nothing. If she went to the police, she'd be the one arrested. If she tried to take back the money, she'd only dig herself in deeper. And if she tried to screw me over again? Well, I had one final card to play. I reached for the folder sitting on my counter and slid it across the table toward her. "You might want to take a look at this." Vanessa hesitated before picking up the folder. I could see the way her fingers tightened around the edges, like she already knew whatever was inside wouldn't be good for her. And she was right. Inside were all the documents I had compiled: bank statements, account registrations, even screenshots of emails she had used to confirm transactions. But the best part? A detailed report I had prepared and almost sent to the authorities. Her eyes darted over the pages, her breath growing shallower with each one she flipped through. I watched as the reality of her situation settled in. She was cornered. No lies, no charm, no crocodile tears could get her out of this one. "You wouldn't," she whispered, but there was no conviction in her voice. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. You sure about that? She swallowed hard. For the first time in her life, she didn't have an answer. I let the silence drag, watching her unravel. Then, I went in for the kill. Here's what's going to happen, I said, keeping my voice calm, controlled. You're going to pay me back, every single cent. I don't care how you do it. Sell your car, get a second job, take out another loan under your own damn name. But you're paying me back. Vanessa opened her mouth, probably to argue, but I held up a hand to cut her off. And if you ever try to pull something like this again, this folder, I tapped it. It goes straight to the police. No warnings, no second chances. Vanessa stared at me, her face a war zone of emotions, rage, humiliation, desperation. I could see the gears in her head turning, trying to find an escape route, some last-minute trick to flip the situation back in her favor. But there wasn't one. I had her exactly where I wanted, and she knew it. She let out a shaky breath and dropped the folder onto the counter like it physically burned her. Fine, she muttered through clenched teeth. I raised an eyebrow. Fine, what? Her jaw tightened. Fine, I'll pay you back. Every cent, I reminded her. She nodded once, jerky and stiff, like it physically pained her to agree. But I wasn't done. And I want it in writing. Her eyes snapped to mine, widening just slightly. Are you serious? I shrugged. I'm sure you understand. After all, I wouldn't want any misunderstandings. I let the last word drip with meaning. We'll draft up an agreement. You'll pay me back in full, in monthly installments, with interest, same way a bank would. Miss a payment, and the folder goes straight to the authorities. She opened her mouth, maybe to argue, maybe to curse me out, but then she shut it again, because she knew. She knew she didn't have a choice. The next week was the sweetest kind of justice. I had a lawyer friend draft up a repayment agreement, nothing too complicated, just enough to make it legally binding. Vanessa showed up to sign it, looking like she wanted to vomit the entire time. I half expected her to try and weasel out of it, but she didn't. She knew I wasn't bluffing. I watched as she scribbled her name at the bottom of the contract, her signature sharp and angry. When she shoved the pen down on the table, I slid a copy toward her. This one's yours, I said, smiling. Wouldn't want you forgetting the terms. She snatched it up without a word, stuffing it into her purse. Her hands were shaking. I could tell she wanted to scream, to throw something, to somehow turn this around on me. But there was nothing she could do. For the first time in our lives, I was in control, and she was the one cleaning up the mess. And oh, how I enjoyed watching it unfold. Every month, like clockwork, a payment hit my account. Some were late, but she never dared miss one completely. I could only imagine the absolute humiliation it must have been for her, knowing that every dollar she sent my way was a reminder of how she'd lost, and just to make sure she never forgot. Every now and then, I'd send her a little message, just a simple text. Thanks for your payment, Vanessa. Months passed, and Vanessa did what she always did. She adapted. She wasn't the type to apologize, not really, but I could tell she had learned her lesson. She kept her distance, only reaching out when absolutely necessary, usually with short-clipped messages about her payments. At some point, I stopped thinking about the money. It was no longer about the numbers in my account. It was about the satisfaction of knowing she had to work for it, knowing she had to feel the sting of every cent she handed back. That was the real victory. Then one day she called me. Can we be done with this? Her voice was strained, forced calm. I've paid back almost everything. What do you even get out of this anymore? I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window, considering her words. And then I laughed, because the answer was simple. Peace of mind, I said, and a reminder that I'll never let you screw me over again. She exhaled sharply, defeated. I could hear it in the silence that stretched between us. She had no more fight left, no more excuses. She knew now that I wasn't the sister she could manipulate anymore. I let the silence sit a moment longer before finishing, my voice steady, certain. We're done when I say we're done, Vanessa? And then I hung up.